Hi, today we're going to talk about working with your buyer's attorney to get your buyer to a successful closing. So you viewed a lot of properties, or maybe you were lucky and just had to view one, but you made an offer and it was accepted. Now what? The ball is essentially in the attorney's court at this point, but you still need to stay in the game. Make sure that the wheels are moving in the same direction and help steer the transaction to a successful close. By now you should have had your team put together. That includes you, the realtor, the lender, and the buyer's attorney. Communication between all the parties is key. I recommend using the first step as a way to introduce all of the parties to each other. So you'll be sending your fully executed contract and the disclosures to the attorney, the lender, and your buyer. And in that email, introduce everyone and some key dates so that everybody is on the same page. What do you do at this point?
Well, at this point, once I get all of the info, I'm going to make my phone call to both you as their agent and to our client to make sure there isn't any other important information that I need outside of the terms of the contract.
Step 2 is the earnest money. You put in the earnest money amounts in the contract, and so we need to stick with those. The listing broker will give you instructions. Stay on top of it. Make that deposit, get the receipt, and make sure the receipt gets to your team.
Yeah, it's very important that I get this information because this is one of the contingencies in the contract on which the seller can cancel the contract. So if that earnest money isn't tendered by the date in the contract, you have the possibility of losing the deal.
Step 3 should be happening simultaneously. You're going to schedule the inspection. Make sure that it's scheduled within the dates indicated in the contract. That's typically 5 days, but maybe you've asked for 7 or 10, depending on the needs of your buyers. I recommend that you and your buyers attend that inspection. It's important because something will always come up. And it's great to have perspective so that you can see exactly what is being pinpointed as a potential issue. And those results will come back within 24 to 48 hours. And at this point, it's really in the buyer's attorney's court to negotiate any items that come up as a result of that inspection.
Right, so once I get the issues back, I'm going to talk to our clients and go over their 3 options, which essentially are they can cancel the contract, they can ask for the seller to make certain repairs, or they can ask for a credit so that they can do repairs on their own. Once we've gone through all of these issues, I'm going to take them and put them into the attorney modification letter that I've been working on throughout this time.
What can the buyer and I as a realtor expect to occur throughout this attorney review process?
So during this time, there's probably going to be a few letters going back and forth between myself and the seller's attorney, hopefully increasingly working towards resolution. And once we come to that resolution, we're now out of attorney modification and the inspection contingency, which means we can now focus on our financing contingencies.
So that brings us to lending, which has been going on throughout this process. The lender takes care of stuff from the very beginning of the contract as well. The important part to note is that after the attorney review period, the appraisal is ordered. And while the buyer pays for it, essentially it is handled by the listing broker. The listing broker schedules it with the appraiser and usually attends the appraisal and even tries to support the amount of the contract with the appraiser. The lender's looking at other things during this time too. They're qualifying the buyers, they're qualifying the home, and if everything moves the way it's supposed to, we get a clear to close.
Right, and once I receive that clear to close, I make sure that our buyer is getting clear title, that there are no issues with the survey, and then I go ahead and schedule that closing with the seller's attorney.
So that brings us to the walkthrough. That goes back to you, the buyer's agent, to coordinate. And I highly recommend you do that immediately before the closing. The purpose of the walkthrough is to make sure that the home is in the same condition that your buyers agreed to purchase it in. That means that if any repairs were negotiated, they've been made, it's in broom swept condition, and there's a whole slew of other items that you can inspect. The important thing is that if anything is off, you bring it to the buyer's attorney's attention as soon as you find that out.
Right, because at this point I don't have much time to come up with a resolution with the seller's attorney. And we want to get it right for our clients. So the sooner I know, the better, whether it be we have to delay the closing or come up with some other sort of resolution that makes our client happy.
So that brings us to the closing. What can we expect?
Well, at this point, I'm just going to go through all the documents with our clients, make sure they understand everything, and once they do, we wait for lenders' funding approval, and then we're closed.
And that's a great reason to celebrate. You'll want to be there with your clients to celebrate, mostly for moral support. There's not much that a realtor does during the closing, but it helps to be there. It shows that you've been in the game from the very first showing through the closing. So to summarize, if you keep your team on the same page, communicate all parties, and maybe even put together a list of deliverables once you are under contract, and make sure that those dates are followed to include the earnest money, the inspection, and all of the other items, you'll be sure that you will move more cleanly to a successful close.